So welcome folks today for agronomy lesson number 3 from Monty's. Nate was generally put all this together. We appreciate what he's doing. He is actually doing some goodwill in his community. One of his friends' father fell and had a pretty bad head injury. So he is helping him today, and he won't be on here, but he sends his best regards to all of you guys, hoping that you will learn something out of the presentation today. And we'll have 3 or 4 people do presentation today on here. So our first one is Josh Frommie. He's our division director in the Western Division. So Josh, you want to announce what you're doing and go into your program?
Yep, I'd be happy to. Good morning, everybody. As Joe said, my name is Josh Frommie. I'm going to go over today Monty's liquid carbon as a nitrogen stabilizer. What I did last year was used it as a stabilizer, and what it was is a couple of growers in southern Minnesota wanted to try Monty's liquid carbon, but they had not used it. In southern Minnesota, sometimes it's difficult to get growers to try new things. And so generally we would use the liquid carbon in conjunction with some Agrisweet, but these couple guys just wanted to try the liquid carbon to start with. So as an overview, Monty's liquid carbon can act as a natural nitrogen stabilizer in the soil by binding to the nitrogen molecules, preventing them from leaching out and making them more readily available to the plants. Essentially, the complex structure of humic substances allows them to hold on to the nitrogen ions, acting as a reservoir to prevent the loss through leaching and volatilization, thus improving the nitrogen efficiency. And the mechanism of that is, as we know, humic substances have a high ion exchange capacity, meaning that they can attract and hold positive charges ions like ammonium, a form of nitrogen, which prevents it from being washed away by water. What are the benefits of this? So by stabilizing the nitrogen, the Monty's liquid carbon can improve the fertilizer efficiency, reduce the nitrogen loss from the soil, and promote healthier plant growth. When applied with nitrogen fertilizer, MLC can form stable complexes with the nitrogen molecules, preventing them from being readily converted into gaseous forms and that can escape into the atmosphere. It also can help stimulate the beneficial soil microbes that play a role in nitrogen fixation and cycling, further enhancing the nitrogen availability to the plants. So, like I said, in the spring of 2023, Faber Brothers Farms in Trimont, Minnesota wanted to try MLC. We decided to use it as a nitrogen stabilizer. So we took an 80-acre field, split it in half to use it as a trial. All the variables were the same. The products were applied over the top of planted corn pre-emerge. So what did we do? On half of the field, we used 40 gallons of 32% UAN. It was applied over per acre as a control. The grower standard practice. This is what they do every year as their nitrogen source. On the other half of the field, the only thing that we did different was use 1 gallon of Monty's liquid carbon added to the 40 gallons per acre of UAN, and these are the only 2 variables. Here's shortly after emergence. On the left, you can see the MLC with the 1 gallon at 40 gallons of 32. We got more root hairs on the plants, longer roots, looked really good. Again, a little bit more of a close-up of those root hairs, looking really, really good, really healthy. And then here's the untreated. So you can see the difference in the 2. We went out, I believe this was, it was June 30th, 2023. The corn on the left was a 14 leaf. Corn on the right was at 11. Both really good looking plants, but you can see the difference in the growth of the 2. Here's the roots on those 2 stalks. Couple pictures showing the girth of the stalk, of the healthiness. That's an untreated, it's just under an inch. I kind of got it at a bad angle there. I should have been over to the left a little bit better to show a true. I would say it was more probably 7/8 or something like that. And then here's the stalk of the MLC. Again, I should have been over a little bit more. I think it'd be a little bit more than an inch. So in the side-by-side, that same side-by-side at the end of July, I walked through the field and took photos and ear samples. And here's some of the differences. This is the untreated. You can show the nitrogen deficiency, the stalk firing, halfway up there, leaves falling down brown. Again, showing nitrogen deficiency there. This was throughout the untreated side of the field. And then we got over to the treated side of the field. And again, this was the only difference was adding a gallon of Monty liquid carbon to the 32%. I mean, you good and green all the way down to the ground. And then here's the difference that we saw random ears. I'd pull a random ear, walk over 20, 30 rows and another probably 50 yards down. Completely random ear pulling on both the treated and the untreated side. Yield count that day, showed 206 bushels versus 154 bushels. One thing I will say on that is that we did not get an end yield check. They unfortunately got out there and harvested the field, and we did not get an end result yield check, but to get actual numbers. But you can see the differences in the ears there. Also, June 2023, Nathan Carr, who's the director of soil and water for Faribault County in southern Minnesota. He's a big advocate for soil health, doing things different and, promoting soil health, soil efficiency. He tried an MLC on a side dress application of 32%. He also split an 80-acre field in half. 40 acres was the control with 20 gallons of 32% side dress applied per acre. That was his standard practice. On the other 40 acres, he applied 19 gallons of 32% and 1 gallon of MLC. So he did drop one gallon down of the nitrogen to help support the cost of the MLC. We observed the field throughout the summer. A hailstorm came through in July, and the field sustained 26% crop damage per the crop insurance adjuster. 2 weeks before harvest, we went out and walked the field, and this is what we found. Got a couple of quick videos here showing some differences, so I'll go ahead and play those. This was in the treated side. I think I might have. Yeah. Sorry about that. I played the same one over again. Here's another section in the treated side. And then here's the untreated side of things. And one more quick video. This is again on the untreated. If you go back and look at those videos, actually, you can see some differences between the treated and untreated. There are quite a few more green leaves in that treated section than still at this point in the season. But you can see those stalks were cannibalized. They were doing everything they could to get whatever nutrients that they wanted, and it took everything out of that stalk that it could. So Nathan reported a minimum of 20 bushels difference between the treated and untreated. He was also very thankful that they did not have a wind event before he was able to get that field harvested, which is actually pretty unlikely, unusual in southern Minnesota. They have a ton of wind, so he was very lucky that that corn didn't lay down. For 2024, Nathan was so impressed with the Monty's liquid carbon that he ended up going with Catalyzer, the concentrated form of MLC. And, when I talked to him, I said, you have the ability to drop that down at a half a gallon per acre to be equivalent to the MLC 1 gallon per acre. And he said, if MLC worked that well, I want to go with Catalyzer on 2024 at a gallon per acre also. He also ended up buying it for every field of his corn for 2024. Additional benefits of the MLC with a nitrogen source is the buffering of the salt content. And here's a chart showing the different salt indexes of fertilizers. You can pause this video or take a screenshot if you'd like, but it shows the salt index for each individual form of nitrogen that you may put on in the spring or fall, and even dry fertilizer on the right hand side there with DAP and MAP and potash. Yeah, take a screenshot of this. You can see the differences in the salt indexes and how Monty's liquid carbon helps buffer those salts. And Joe could probably touch base a little bit more on that in detail. So. And with that, that's all I have as far as nitrogen stabilizers.
So Josh, back on your couple of trials,
Yeah.
I noticed, could you say that where you use the MLC, we had additional stalk strength, because I saw you pushing on them and they didn't go over. And
Yep.
then you also had, it looked like a better fill all the way to the tip.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, the untreated honestly did pretty good, but the treated side of thing was all the way to the tip, which we don't always see that in southern Minnesota with pollination, because pollination, the weather can be so touchy, whether it's heat or cold or wind or, excess moisture or whatever the case may be. So to see those filled all the way out to the tip like that on the treated with nothing left was pretty impressive.
Yeah, very
Those
good.
those treated stocks that I was pushing on, if you look in the video, you can actually see my fingertips turn white because I'm pushing on those stocks so hard to get them over as far as I was. So if you look closely at my fingers, you can actually see the pressure that I was putting on those stocks to push them over as far as I was. Those were
Right.
good, strong stocks.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very important when it comes to harvest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks.
Absolutely.
You can quit sharing your screen if you want.
Okay. I will do that.
And I think next we have Bernie wants to give us a testimonial on some products that he has used and the results he's seen. Are you still there, Bernie? Can you hit on your Josh on the
Yeah,
green button?
I'm getting it brought back up here. There we go. Sorry, I had all kinds of different screens popped up there.
So Bernie, are you available to chat with us?
There it went. Can you
There
hear
we
me,
go.
Joe?
Yes.
All right.
You're good.
So when you get into the family of Monty's active humic technology and the different products, whether it's liquid carbon or catalyzer, or the product I want to talk about is called Bio-Enerhume. And on the label, it's a 6.5% humic. So I'm in Kansas, and there's eastern Kansas and basically Missouri, a lot down in Oklahoma. The iron content in a lot of places can be extremely high, which causes the nutrient balance to be out of whack. We have a lot of fields with high magnesium, not just 15 parts per million in base saturation, but upwards towards 30. And I know some guys have worse than that. So when you start seeing, whether it's a pasture or a row crop field in an area with low production, you start digging into it. And as example, iron, adequate iron parts per million on the soil test, 5 to 10 parts per million. You get into like high, you're in that 19 to 23 parts per million. Basically, it goes to very high at 25 parts per million. And that doesn't sound so bad, but I've got guys that have 200, 300, 350 parts per million of iron, and it just really creates a massive problem. From talking with Dennis, that iron goes to a quadvalent versus a divalent or double positive charge. So it starts throwing a lot of things out of whack. So it can actually cause more problems with salt. It's kind of like magnesium. You get high magnesium, soil doesn't drain, then you have problems with lack of oxygen getting to the roots, or not having having an anaerobic soil condition. And of course, everybody knows that only the cruddy biology can live in those environments. The rest of it either dies off or goes dormant. So using anywhere from 1 to 2 gallons of the Bio-Enerhume, we see a noticeable difference in a short period of time. So, we had a strip mine down in southwest Missouri, and they redid it. They put lime, they put all kinds of dry fertilizer out there, and nothing would get over ankle high in this pasture. And it was all red in color. And we put a gallon of Bio-Enerhume on. He didn't get to it till late in the season, but the next year when things came around, I went back down to look at it. In the grass in that pasture, everything was as tall as the fence. So if you do a application early enough in the season, you literally can go back in 30, 40 days, pull another soil sample and see a change in the different numbers. And what's interesting is, like Josh was talking about, the ion exchange capacity. So you're getting some of the unwanted stuff out of the root zone, but yet you're still releasing micronutrients that we need. So another area I use this in, those high mag where you have a lot of ponding or puddling. You think about a few acres in a field. Now, Dave Davies had 15 acres of some salt issues. I mean, like a 22% base saturation number out of there was 96 acres in that field. So by correcting that issue, you know, his APH obviously dramatically went up. So, I mean, you have a bunch of zeros and you start, even if you're only 75% of the best part of the field, that's a massive improvement. So salt problems, high magnesium and iron. And typically if you got a spot that just doesn't respond to a lot of other things, everything I've put the Bio-Enerhume on has absolutely shown a positive return on investment. So, you know, if you're grid sampling, doesn't mean you leave the bad spots alone. You've moved all your fertilizer to the better parts of the field. Well, let's now look at those areas that are less productive. Let's start bringing that APH up on those acres. And you don't have to go rent more ground or buy more ground. Start fixing some of the problems that we currently have. So I don't know if that's enough, Joe, or.
Well, let me ask you this. So you're using this product to help these guys in this remediation. So you go in, we make sure that they have a current soil test with
Correct.
all the bells and whistles on it we can get, so we know what they're dealing with. And as you're talking about the high iron and the high mag, I'm assuming that you and the farmer probably go out and dig up the root system to see, especially with the iron and the mag, you probably have a very shallow or very small root mass. Therefore, you can't get the yield like you were talking about. What was it, ankle high, or that you?
Right.
Was only,
yes.
So yeah, so this is the impact of all this out of balance nutrients, and this is one of the things that we actually pride ourselves on at Monty's, is having solutions. So we want to find out the problem, we want to deal with the
Correct.
issue with the farmer, and then here we come in with Bio-Enerhume, which is a newer type product to help solve these problems. So how many years, tell me right now, how many years has the farmer been using the Bio-Enerhume?
I've got some people that have been using the last 3 years.
Okay. We see
So
an improvement each year.
I'm sorry, what was that, Joe?
I said, did you see an improvement each year?
Oh, yes. Like Dave Davies at 22% base saturation on his sodium. I mean, nothing would grow. Literally went out and sprayed some out in February. And that season, he couldn't believe it. He planted it to silage corn, so there's not a yield comparison, but clearly I went out and walked it with him. I mean, the very worst spot in the field was still shoulder high. Of course, I'm not real tall. I'm 5'5", 5'6", but you know, that's pretty impressive to go from nothing growing to having silage. There's a mixture of corn and sedan grass that was shoulder high. So he couldn't believe his eyes.
Absolutely. And that, that's where I feel like that we at Monty's pride ourselves on having products that provide solutions. And that's the one thing we love to do is go out and investigate what the farmer, whether it's the worst field or what's going on, that he can't get to higher production or higher yield. Well, let's investigate. Let's put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and then we go out with a product to help him remediate that. And it sounds like that's a true remediation story that you're telling there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, in the first 12 months for Dave Davies, he went from 22%. I mean, during the growing season, the salt level just kept dropping. I mean, he got down to a 9, and I'll go back here this month and get back over there and pull some more soil samples and see how low we actually have it. But it's pretty impressive to watch that stuff.
Now, in this particular case, did he broadcast put it on, or did he put it in furrow or 2x2? How did he apply it?
So most of them are putting it in with a sprayer, so just broadcasting it. I have had some guys that run, a gallon, like in a strip till.
Yeah.
So because they want to start fixing that zone, we talk about how the corn will pull 6 inches either side of the stalk. Well, instead of trying to fix every square inch of the field, let's focus on a strip and start balancing those areas that we have the biggest control over.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
I know we were going to have James, our other rep that's in Minnesota, was going to share some of the things that he has seen happen up there in his area, and as far as some really good results. But James called me this morning, and one of his farmers that he's been waiting on to harvest the test plot actually got his piece of equipment fixed, and he has to go pull that test plot. So we'll have James on probably another time to share his example and so of what he has seen. But what I'll do now is we'll move on to my presentation, and then after me, we'll have Amin share his. Does everybody see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it'd probably be better
Yeah.
if I start at the beginning.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about MLC and Agrisweet, and then our product Surge and what that can do and what it's been doing. So let's start at the basics where everything needs to happen. And as you heard, even with Bernie, what's messed up in the soil is going to affect everything that happens above it, including whatever crops being grown on it. And so we know that the ecosystem in the soil is a living, breathing soil, that we call it soil. And if it's not, doesn't have the biology in it, we call it dirt, because it doesn't react with hardly anything. And we know that there's many, many organisms that live in it. We know that it's made up of different organic matter. It's made up of different soil types, whether it's sand, silt, clay, and so forth. And each and every year, farmers deal with that as they grow their crops. So when we talk about this layer of nutrient cycling, one of the struggles that I think each and every one of us are encountering with our growers is that they struggle to get their yields up. They go to the local co-op or someone and say, hey, I do want to try and grow 300 bushel corn. And they go, well, use more NPK. But the results that happens each and every fall is they didn't attain it. And we've got farmers now that we've dealt with that's been putting on NPK for 20 or 30 years, and their yields have not gone up and they've not climbed. In fact, some cases they may have even gone down. And this is what we're running into, is that the high salt loads that are in the soil is affecting everything you see here on the screen, whether it's the bacteria or the fungi. You're throwing all those numbers out of balance. You're affecting the lower level of the predators, whether it's the shredders, the fungal feeders, grazers, bacteria, and so forth. So remediating the salt is one of our number one challenges. And that's exactly what Bernie did with his particular product. It's going to be very interesting to watch each year that changes by what product he's putting on, and helps to bring more and more balance into the soil system. And then not only will the nutrients balance out, but also the biology will increase and continue to give him more and more results. So we'll just mention for a minute bacteria and fungi. We don't think a whole lot about this, but I think in the future, in the next several years, it will become the most important ratio that we're going to need to discover in the soil. And I don't have it on here, but we use a soil test called B-crop. It takes a DNA of the soil and it will tell you the numbers of the ratio of bacteria to fungi, and it will also tell you the numbers of bacteria and biology that you have in the soil, give you numbers to see where you're at. And then, of course, helping that ecosystem to thrive and generate is going to give you yield. And we try and build our soil tilth up, which is what MLC can do. The product that Bernie's using can do. And so even adding sugar to it helps to do that as well. So when we think about bacteria and fungi, and these are their likes, and in a minute their dislikes. But we know that adding sugar has helped tremendously move up the numbers of colony forming units in the soil. Therefore, they're doing more work for us underground. And then they thrive in a particular pH range. So we know pH can affect a lot of things. And we see that when we take the soil test. We go over in this DNA test, and it brings everything to light of what is out of balance and what is not working. And then we can in turn begin to create or offer suggestions with using Monty's products and their advanced technology of humics to help resolve those issues. So when we think of bacteria and fungi, here's their dislikes. And what we see happening in those dislikes is you have unhealthy plants, you have the anaerobic conditions, wet soils. They don't like all of that. High concentrations of CO2, high or low pH. Tillage, of course, disrupts their home, which we deal with that each and every year with a lot of farmers. It's not the tillage that we need to stop it completely, but we have got to put on humics and sugars to build the soil back up, that when they do till it, it recovers very, very quickly. Right now, the system or the ecosystem of the soil cannot recover that fast under tillage systems, because they're putting on so many salts of NPK, which is number 6, the salts from synthetic fertilizers. And you must realize that every bit of fertilizer you put on in the dry form is a salt. It's a high salt. And one of the things that we run into over the years now is the enormous use of muriate of potash, which has 47% chlorine in it, and that is also a detriment to the soil biology. So even the pesticides, the herbicides, we know that there's negative effects from using a lot of Roundup repeatedly. There's studies out there everywhere telling you that you're suppressing a lot of the good biology that we need to do our work for us through the Roundup that we've been applying. So think of humics and sugars and even surge, which we'll get to here in a minute about a fulvic form, is a way to remediate a lot of these negative issues that the farmers have dealt with now for many years, and a way in which it improves all the growing conditions that they're in. So mainly we are focused with the humics and the sugars and the surge on the health of the soil as well as the biology. And that in turn is what's going to grow the healthy crop. So our leading products are the liquid carbon, the MLC. Our Dri-Carbon is actually beginning to pick up use of that either in a strip till form, and then the farmer would plant back over top of that, or many people have actually begun to broadcast it and allow the Dri-Carbon to work in the soil to help remediate tied up nutrients and so forth. And we're seeing advantages not only of using dry, but in many cases, the farmers that want to remediate his soils quickly, he is actually using both. So he's putting on Dri-Carbon many times in the fall, and then in turn, he's putting the carbon and the sugar directly, the Agrisweet product directly in furrow, or especially either that or over in a 2x2 to help in that root zone create the environment that gives the plant nutrition it needs in a timely manner. So the surge product is more of a fulvic plus some humic, mostly fulvic, and we're using that product mainly in high pH soils and high organic matter soils, mainly up in the north part of our country, to help that remediation process take place. And it is working super well. And we'll get into it here in a second. So again, when we're talking about we've got to focus on soil health for increased ROI and higher yields. This is the kind of thing that when you dig up, whether it's wheat, corn, soybeans, or whatever, you want this soil aggregates closely knit together, and mainly like you're seeing here is tied up on the root mass, and you see all the tiny root hairs. That's exactly what's pulling up the moisture, the nutrients, that's stabilizing the plant in the soil. It's doing so much for the environment underground. And this is where the farmers are getting higher yields in wheat or corn or soybeans due to this kind of thing that we're doing about remediation. The opposite of that is what you see in this one, this picture. So how in the world can soil microbes exist or thrive in this kind of environment when you don't see the root hairs, you don't see the soil texture and structure? And many farmers are dealing with through the years where they've either compacted the soils, tilled it excessively, and broke down the structure and the texture of the soil, and then therefore the root mass cannot establish like we wanted it to in the good soil and the good soil aggregates. So this is the beauty of our program when using the liquid carbon MLC, and then together feeding the biology in the soil, which is with Agrisweet, the sugar, and or especially in the north part, we're using surge and sugar, and helping to build that environment underneath that root mass to flourish. We know that the soil structure and texture will not allow the root system to grow and to work. And you see this in this picture, a lot of silt compacted. We usually think about the soil has been worked so much that it crusts over and therefore the biology as well as the root mass cannot have access to oxygen, which it needs, and nor release CO2 to help the plant grow as well. So there's this symbiotic relationship going on all the time in the soil, and this is where we focus with our MLC and the Agrisweet and the Surge products to increase that and help that tremendously. When we see the use of MLC and Agrisweet, then we promote this rich environment for biology to thrive. This great big old earthworm you see on the right, that is the best tillage tool ever made. God put that on the earth for so many different reasons. It's not funny.
Joe,
But yeah.
hey, your slides aren't changing. Is there anything you can do to get them to pop up for us?
I think you're not showing your presentation view. You're showing your computer view.
All right, hold on. You see it now in the computer view?
We can still see your other slides, but we can see the.
You see all my slides to the left?
Yep. Yes.
All right, we're gonna go
Joe,
that way.
Joe, can you go back to your first slide and then just briefly, we just want to see the content.
This one?
Yeah, just from the first slide up to here.
And then this is the next one.
Okay.
Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So as I went down through here, this is the ecosystem of the soil that we talked about, the bacteria, the fungi. This is the one that's talked about building soil health, soil tilth, use of the bacteria, the fungi. These ratios are very important. And then this one just shows the likes and dislikes of what's going on when we happen to make the bacteria and the fungi flourish. And that's what we see on the left is their likes and on the right is their dislikes. Then we got into the products, the MLC, the Surge, the Dri-Carbon, and the Agrisweet product. And by the way, the Agrisweet product has the use of two different forms of sugar that the biology loves as well as the plant. And then we got into the soil aggregates. This is what you want to see in that root mass underground with these tiny root hairs on it. And the soil is holding together, the structure is holding together. And then when you go to the poor soil, which a lot of times we deal with, you see this kind of thing. So there's not a lot of structure. There's not a lot of texture. And therefore the root mass doesn't even have anything to hardly grow in, nor does it have biology there to help facilitate nutrients and moisture and stuff into the plant. And then when I was talking about, again, more soil structure and texture here of it crusting over, you can't get the plant to emerge through it. Sometimes they die underground if it crusts over very heavy. So yeah, it's very, very important that we're dealing with soil health. And then I was talking about the earthworms. Okay, so no, this is the best tillage tool ever made. Number 2 dot here is an indicator if the farmer wants to go out and dig, which I'm sure like all of us that go out, take soil tests and things in the farmer's field, and we can dig and roughly per square foot and count the number of earthworms is a good soil health indicator. What's going on out there? Do I have biology, and is it working for me by the number of earthworms that's in the soil? So when we talk about our carbon, liquid carbon, and I know one of the culprits that we run into with competitors, either coming in before us or behind us, we have a 2% humic acid. Now, the difference here versus a 4, a 6, a 10, a 12, I know other competitors might even have in the 20% range, is the higher the percent, the more sludge that you have in the product. We have a very clean humic. And the 2% is mainly due because we have an activated humic. And it is in a true solution versus competitors that's in a suspension. And this is one of the reasons that you see a lot of sludge and thickness in the bottom of a tote due to all of that suspended linternite or lignite coal that it came from. So we get ours from the same place, but we have a proprietary process that makes ours activated, which produces a lot of results that we've been talking about. In fact, it goes back to what Bernie was talking about in his being able to remediate high magnesium and high salt loads. It is truly activated and does that reclamation that's going on in the soil. Then to Josh's slides, or to his point, here we've added a half a gallon of carbon in with 50 gallons of UAN and spread it broadcast over wheat. And you see on the left was without the MLC, and it burns the leaves of the plants, whatever it's sprayed on. And then over on the right, we buffered that salt that was in the 28% and reduced the burn effect on that particular wheat. And this goes back to increasing the efficiency of the nitrogen and increasing the efficiency of the uptake of that nitrogen as well. So our goal is to grow a healthy, profitable crop. So it's really what gets in the plant that makes the yield. Even though you may have it in the soil, sometimes we don't get it into the plant. And we've seen that versus soil tests versus tissue sampling. And you see big discrepancies. That tells you that the soil is out of balance. Your biology is very likely not working for you. And this is why all farms need to use the MLC and Agrisweet, and the use of Surge is a driver with other products to help increase their efficiency of everything they're using on the farm to make it way more beneficial. We know that pH plays a huge role in here, right in the center where you see the kind of a faded white area. That's where we want to be. That's where the most nutrients becomes available. And when we do take these soil tests and we get pH readings, now you understand, looking at this chart, how it can become very acidic. And then if it is, we don't have access to a lot of the nutrients. And the same thing happens way out on the other end of the spectrum when you have a very high pH as well. We do not have access to the amount of nutrients that we would like, and it throws things out of balance. And this is part of what MLC and Agrisweet and Surge is capable of. And you will see that on taking soil tests prior and then using the product, then taking the soil test afterwards. One of our big components that has been using our products now for, probably 12 years now or so. And he is the one that actually began to use it in the beginning to prove that it wouldn't work. But he has really been an instrument to helping us promote the benefits of our liquid carbon. And on average, he gains 10 to 12 bushel on wheat. And on average, he gains 22 bushels on corn. So that's a really great testimony from him of what we're trying to tell you guys today. So when we look at it, we say MLC and Agrisweet and Surge contribute to soil health and ROI. So we know that the farmers we've been working with across the country that is striving for higher yields and has not been able to get there until recently, that we began working with them and introducing them to humic acids, as well as our humic acid, the liquid carbon, and the use of Agrisweet together has helped remediate those soils and increase their biology. And so we've helped them to go in furrow or 2x2 or wide drop applications, and gain many of the growers to achieve for the very first time 300 bushel corn. So on many of these high yield farmers, they are using both products during the growing season, anywhere from 3 to 5 gallons per acre. These higher rates will remediate quicker. Now you can go lower, but it's just going to take a lot longer to remediate than it would using the high. And in many cases, I think you even heard Josh mention that the farmer reduced his nitrogen application and to cover the cost of adding the MLC and the Agrisweet, which helped to stabilize the nitrogen, helped to stabilize the nutrients, and then in turn release more nutrients, making it available to the crop. So it was definitely worth reducing some product that you're putting on and putting in the MLC and the Agrisweet. So Surge, we talk about a little bit, Surge XD also works in the same manner, but it is a driver. It's more of a driver. So we add this many times to a foliar application, but many farmers, especially in the north, are using it in furrow or 2x2 or even in wide drops at the use of rate of 2 to 4 quarts. Many of them have even gone to 1 to 2 gallons to get things happening quicker and faster in the soil. So that's a little bit about this. If you don't get your soils in balance, you're really not able to increase the efficiency of everything you're putting on it. So even though you're throwing out there every year, let's say 200 or 300 pounds or more of NPK, you're only getting a very small fraction use out of that if your soils are not in balance, if they're not active with your biology working for you. I think he mentioned, or Josh mentioned Catalyzer, which is a little higher humic product. One of the farmers has switched to this, and many times our use rate is 2 to 4 quarts normally, but our high yield growers are using anywhere from 2 to 4 gallons to remediate many of their problems a lot quicker. And then the synergy increases when we begin to add Agrisweet sugar to that component as well. So Surge is a look here. We have a lot of fulvic acid in it as well as humic acid. So we use that mainly in foliar applications and stuff as well to help drive. Remember, it's a driver to help drive that nutrient into the plant. Here's just a quick look at adding Surge. We added it to enhance boron. And then, and you see in this trials how that we've increased in all the green bars that Surge increased the uptake of boron tremendously. And over to the right, you get to see how many bushels that it added to different, even adding it to our competitor's product. There's another one where we took a look at Surge plus a starter, Surge by itself, the starter by itself, and then the control. So you see over to the right the difference that it makes in all of that, especially the return on investment that we all must focus on to keep our farmers in business. And then I'll share just a little bit about our sugar. Our Agrisweet products of 55%. You see here in the two different kinds of fructose is about 24%. Glucose is about 31%. Then we actually have a Agri-N product with 14% nitrogen in it. And then those two products drop down to around 26% total. So this is a super great product. In fact, many of the farmers that's using it now is beginning to use more and more of it because of what they see happening when they do add this product. And then when combined with the liquid carbon, it creates a two-way synergy between the soil and the biology. And then here's just another look of where we've gone out and compared it to other sugar sources in the marketplace. That you have our product is 55%, QLF's around 30%, and it's only one particular sugar, sucrose. You have molasses, which is many farmers try to use, but it's a mess. It's sticky. It stops up strainers sometimes, but it's only a 30 or 40%. And then you have regular table sugar you go to the grocery to buy, but it's also only one form of sugar. So you do get advantages in using two different forms of sugar in the plant because that is very beneficial to it. So when we see the benefits of these two forms of sugar, we see on the left here a lot of herbicide synergy. It makes things work better. It helps reduce disease pressure. It helps with microbes in the soil. It helps with plant health. And then in soil health, it also helps with increased microbial population, reduce plant stress. The synergism with carbon and sugar together has produced a lot of benefits to farmers that are using it. And so we are very interested and very pleased in using it to help remediate and help solve a lot of the issues that farmers are dealing with. And so here's just a quick look at what these products provide. Like Catalyzer, you see the little green dots, Monty's carbon here, Dri-Carbon here, but then we have other products we haven't even talked about yet. But here's Surge actually producing ability to stabilize as well as optimize things. We have a true form of fulvic and Drivus, and then we have yet another product for remediation and breakdown of crop residue called Humitil, which we may get into in another session that we have. So again, that's about all I want to cover today. Any questions before we move on to Amin?